Hi, welcome to Opening Flow today. Looking at getting into the hamstrings again like we did last time. So I know that this is something that a lot of you have been asking for another class for the hamstrings, so hopefully this will really help today. So we'll get into the hamstrings and then also the surrounding muscles, so a little bit into the hips and also opening up through the lower back. So just do what feels good today. Don't feel like you have to be able to fold yourself up into a pretzel. So yeah, take whatever variations feel comfortable, feel good for your body, and being really mindful not to overstretch, so that you're taking that kind of gentle increase in flexibility rather than trying to blast it all in one class. So props for today, we will grab a few things, a couple of blocks. These will be really helpful. Blocks are just a good way of extending arm length, which is great if you're not sort of comfortably touching toes. A strap, and then also a couple of cushions and a blanket. So grabbing hold of those bits, and we're going to come to start cross-legged. So you can either be fully cross-legged with the feet underneath the knees, or if it's comfortable, you can have one heel in front of the other and have the feet a little bit more open instead. So the knees are wider and the heels are kind of one in front of the other. If you want to, you can grab cushions, you can pop them underneath knees in either position. So if you're quite tight in the hips as well, that might feel comfortable. And otherwise, once you get there, finding a comfortable seat, allowing your eyes to close, hands come and rest down onto the legs. Maybe going for palms facing up today. It's an opening flow, so kind of inviting openness into the body by having the palms facing up. And seeing if you can draw the chest forward and the spine long, taking any rounding out of the spine and also tucking the lower ribs just slightly so you're not arching through the lower back. And taking a moment to check in with how your body's feeling today. So perhaps you're doing this class because you know that your hamstrings are tight all the time and it's something that you're working on. So perhaps setting an intention for today. What is it that you want to get from this practice? And is there something, maybe a phrase that you want to take into practice today? So it can be something as simple as, listen to my body today, take it as far as it feels it wants to go. So see what comes up for you. Maybe it's be kind to myself if I can't get into every pose. Allowing yourself to sit with that intention if you've set one. And on your next inhale, imagining that you're breathing in openness into the body, almost as if there's extra space just being created through your inhale. Exhaling to let everything go through the mouth. Inhaling to create space, imagining length being formed throughout the body. Exhaling to release. One more time, inhaling space, inhaling energy. And exhaling, letting it all go. Changing the cross of the legs over, you can keep the eyes closed. So coming to the side that probably feels a little weird, a little less comfortable, working evenly into the body today. And then coming back to those inhales and exhales. Visualizing that space being created. Visualizing openness throughout your whole body. On your next inhale, slowly allowing the eyes to open. And hand under each knee, drawing the knees together and feet on the ground. So we're going to do a little bit of gentle opening up work through the back of the legs. So allowing the left leg to straighten out to the ground, keeping the right leg bent, and then opening out the right knee, bringing the sole of the right foot to the left thigh. You might want to have a little shuffle here, getting cozy. So if this already doesn't feel like a particularly comfy position, if you're noticing that your spine's wanting to round here, then you can either pop yourself on a cushion, which will help elevate the hips a little bit more, or what might be more comfortable, just because the hips open, is to bring the hands behind the body, press into the hands, and that will help draw the chest forward. So if your legs are super tight today, it might be that you take this pose just like this, and you allow yourself to stay here, maybe closing the eyes. If you're comfortable sitting here, inhale, reaching the arms up, and we'll go through those nice waves, exhaling, coming forward. So coming forward any amount, leading with the chest, keeping the head lifted, exhaling back. So don't worry about this going too far, don't worry about the head coming to the knee. Warming up at the back of the legs really gradually. There's no goal here, the hands don't need to come anywhere near to the feet. Coming through once more. So what you're really trying to avoid is this tucking of the chin, the rounding through the spine and coming down all kind of hunched over, keeping everything nice and open, even if you just come down a little way. And then on the last one, you can either bring the hands behind the body, staying upright, or if you want to, you can come forward a little bit. It might literally be the tiniest little bit, bringing the hands down. Or it might be that you've got a little bit more space. So again, don't worry about this coming too far. Don't worry about the head needing to come down to the knees. Keeping length through the spine, openness through the chest. And just come down as far as feels good today, even if that's staying upright. One more breath. And then walking the hands back in if you've taken a little forward fold. And bringing that right knee up, straightening out the right leg, hands behind the body, a little shake of the legs. And then drawing that left foot in and opening up on this side. So left foot, right thigh. Movement of the hips and turning the body to face that right leg. And again, you may want to stay hands behind the body the whole time, pressing forward, opening up the chest. If you're comfortable to take those little waves, then reaching up tall as you inhale and exhale coming through your waves. So again, really I encourage you, just take small little waves for this one. Don't worry about coming down super far. You can literally wave up and just move forward a couple of inches if you want. That's okay. Visualizing that space being created, just as we talked about right at the beginning. Last one here. And an option to either bring the hands behind the body or reach up tall and then come forward any amount, leading with the chest. So almost as if you're actually being pulled down from this very center point on the breastbone. So that's where, if there's any forward movement, it's coming from there. And feel free to stay nice and upright here. So absolutely okay to barely come forward at all, feeling into your legs. These are your hamstrings, and it will not feel good to overstretch them. So being really, really mindful of that. Seeing if you can let go of any holding in the legs. You can find a little bit of looseness. Visualizing the back of the legs, lengthening, opening up. And if there's any discomfort at all, then moving out a little bit, coming up a bit higher. One more breath here. And then walking hands back in. Hands come behind the body, bringing that left leg out, a little shake of the legs. So now that the legs have had a little bit of warming up, we're going to come forward with both legs straight. So what you might want to do here if the hamstrings are really tight, come and sit up on the cushion. And that'll help to, if you sit on the sort of the edge of the cushion or the edge of a block, that'll help to tip the hips forward. So you can see as I'm sitting on this cushion, it's tipping the hips forward. So do feel free to do that. That will help get rid of any rounding in the spine. And then grabbing hold of your strap, so you can have the feet either completely together or you can have them hips width apart, it's up to you. I'm going to go hips width because I need a little bit of space coming forward these days. And then bringing the strap around the feet, so you might want to bend the legs to get it there. So it's coming around the balls of the feet. And then inhale, sitting tall, and exhale, just as we did before, leading with the chest, begin to come forwards a little bit. So as with before, it might be that you don't come forward very much. In fact, it might be you come forward less in this particular fold because you've got both legs out straight, and that does tend to make it a little more intense. So feel free to come forward as far as feels good. Maybe you close your eyes so that you can really start to feel into the chest moving forward and the spine staying long. So it's really nice having the strap for this because it means that you haven't got to worry about reaching the toes. Of course, if you have got a comfortable reach on the toes without too much rounding in the spine, then you can hold on to the feet, but the strap kind of just helps to take the pressure off a little bit. So one more breath here. And then releasing the strap, taking it off to one side and getting off the cushion. You can have a little shake of the legs if you'd like, making your way onto all fours when you're ready. So hands coming underneath shoulders, knees underneath hips. And from here, tucking the toes underneath and pressing through the hands and the feet to lift up into downward facing dog. So if your hamstrings are tight today, you might want to start off with the knees bent, making sure you've got the spine long first of all. And then inhaling up onto both toes, exhaling, bringing the right heel down. So taking a pedal through the feet. Inhaling to the toes, exhaling left heel down. So this is a really slow movement, one movement to one breath. And use it to explore what's going on for you, whether one leg's tighter than the other. No pressure at all for the heels to need to come down. In fact, not an essential part of yoga at all for the heels to need to be on the ground in downward facing dog. You're much better off having the feet with the heels a little lifted, and then you'll get that stretch in the back of the calves through the back of the legs. So sometimes it can be tempting to take a very short downward facing dog so that the heels can reach the ground. I would encourage you go a little bit longer in your downward facing dog and have the heels just a tiny bit from the ground, and then you'll get more of a stretch, more of an opening. Okay, coming to center when you're ready. You can have the knees bent here if you want. Inhaling up onto the toes, and then lunging the right foot forward to the top of the mat. You can use your hand to help it get there if you want. Lowering down the back knee and grabbing hold of both of your blocks. So we've done this one before. You can untuck back toes if you wish, bringing the blocks underneath the hands so that the hips can kind of sink down a little bit. And this is just to open up the front of the hips. So remember, front and back of the body work together. So if the front of the body is tight, you can guarantee that the back will probably also be tight, or if there's tightness on one end, there might be weakness on the other side. So we're opening up front and back today. As you exhale, rocking back, bringing the blocks with you, and then lifting up the front toes so that you begin to open up the back of the right leg. So the blocks are here really so that you're able to, again, have that length through the spine. If you haven't got blocks, then you can bring fingertips down to the ground. But again, it's trying to avoid that big rounding through the spine. So the blocks are really helpful here so that you're not rounding. The blocks can be removed as time goes on, as the hamstrings get a bit longer, and then it can feel a bit more comfortable to come down and bend over that leg. So staying with the blocks for now. And then we'll take another rock forward and back. So moving the blocks forward, bending into that front knee. And then rocking back. So really pulling that right hip to the back of the mat here, that will help to keep that stretch in that leg. And then walking forward, bending through the front knee, moving any blocks off to the side, keeping them handy at the front of the mat, hands down either side of the foot, tucking the back toes, lifting the back heel, and then stepping that foot forward in front of the other foot. So coming into a kind of a cross leg forward fold. So you've got the left foot comes round in front of the right, and then you're coming into a forward fold. So it might be that the fingertips touch the ground here, or the hands touch the ground. If they don't, then you can always use blocks instead, so that you can bring the ground a little bit closer to you. And then you can still get into the back of the legs. And then once you've got the blocks there, then you can let the upper body be heavy. Taking another breath here. So having those blocks handy in case you need them at any time today. And then stepping that left foot so that your feet are hips width apart. And taking normal forward fold. As you inhale, hands come up to shins or thighs into halfway lift. So the spine is long in halfway lift, gaze is straight down, and opening through the shoulders, so drawing the shoulder blades together. Exhaling, forward fold again. So in forward fold, same idea as with the cross leg. Upper body's heavy, and the hands can come to the ground, but I'd encourage you to keep the legs straight because we're trying to open up the hamstrings. So if the hands don't reach the ground comfortably, then you can bring hands to the legs, or you can bring hands inside of elbows. As you inhale, hands coming to shins or thighs, drawing the spine long, opening up through the chest, shoulder blades together, and coming through once more. So exhaling, forward fold, being really mindful here not to overstretch the back of the legs, so feel free to come down just a little way and have the upper body be heavy wherever you are. Inhaling, halfway lift. And then from here, taking a little bend in the knees, and then a roll all the way up to stand. Then you can take a little shake out with the legs if you like. Making sure your blocks are handy at the front of the mat. As you exhale, hands to prayer, coming back into your forward fold. So hands can be dangling or on the floor. And then if the hands are on the floor, we're going to come into standing splits from here, so bringing the hands to the ground. If not, grabbing hold of your blocks and bringing them in front of the feet. Bringing the gaze down, first of all, So keeping the upper body heavy. So you might want to have the gaze down like you do in halfway lift just to start with. And then we're going to bring the gaze through the legs like we do in a forward fold to the back of the mat. But if it helps your balance just to start with, feel free to look straight down. So standing splits is a bit of a funny word for this because very few people actually go into the splits, so please don't feel like that's the aim. It's certainly not something that I'm going to be doing. What you're going to be doing is bringing the weight into your left foot and then lifting the right foot back. So you might just take it a couple of inches from the ground. So seeing here if the upper body can be heavy, if you can look to the back of the mat. And of course, if you don't want the blocks, if the hands are comfortable on the ground, you can bring hands to the ground. So lifting the leg as high as it feels comfortable, seeing if you can let the upper body be heavy. And you're lifting from the inner thigh, so that will help to keep the hips straight down to the ground. Imagine you've got two headlights on the front of your hips and they're shining straight down onto your mat. And maybe you can lift a little higher, just one more breath, and then lowering that leg back down. Bending the knees, bringing the hands down by the feet, and stepping back into downward facing dog. So again, you can take a little pedal through the feet here. Getting a feel for how the legs maybe feel different from one another. Seeing if you can keep that length in the lower back. And then back to center. So we'll come on to the other side. So as you inhale, up onto your toes, left foot forward in between the hands. And lowering down the back knee when you get there, untucking toes, grabbing hold of your blocks. So blocks underneath hands, hands underneath shoulders, and letting that hip sink at the front, letting the right hip sink down, open it up. As you exhale, rocking back, bring the blocks with you, lifting up the front toes, and then opening up through the back of the left leg. So seeing if you can kind of scoot the left hip back a little bit so that you get a nice opening through that front leg, or at least a feeling of it moving back. And then inhale, coming forward. Exhale, rocking back one more time. So if you are folding forwards here, you're leading with the chest, the spine is long. Moving the left hip back. Coming forward on your inhale. And then blocks in front of the mat, so they're handy if you want them for any of these forward folds. Hands either side of your feet. Tucking the back toes, lifting the back knees, and you're going to take a step forward with that back foot, coming in front of the front foot here, into your cross-legged forward fold. So upper body's heavy in every forward fold that we do, so getting the upper body heavy. If the fingers touch the ground, leaving the fingers on the ground. If they don't, grab hold of your blocks, and then you don't have to worry about where the ground is, and you can fold forward from there. So whatever feels good for you, opening up the back of the legs, only coming forward as far as feels good. And then stepping that right foot to hips width apart, taking forward fold as normal, so feel free to use the blocks again if you want. If that feels better, if that gives you that extra reach. You can also let the arms dangle, or bring hands inside of elbows. Inhaling, drawing long, halfway lift. We'll take those 3 pulses up and down. Exhaling, forward fold. Inhaling, halfway lift, drawing the shoulder blades together. Seeing if you can find real length through the spine, gaze straight down to the floor. And exhaling, forward fold. Inhaling, halfway lift. And then taking a little bend through the knees, rolling through the spine, up to stand. And have a little shake out through the legs when you get there. So we'll try standing splits with the other leg this time. And again, feel free to use the blocks. Try and have the upper body be heavy like you do in normal forward fold. And don't worry how far the foot comes off the ground. So hands coming to prayer. As you exhale, folding forwards. If you know that the hands reach the ground, then the hands can come to the ground. You can come on little fingertips like you're cupping little tennis balls. Otherwise, hands coming to blocks and coming up from there. So this time, bringing the left leg, I nearly forgot which leg we were on then for a minute, grounding down into the right foot and bringing the left foot back. So lifting from the inner thigh, maybe you come just a little way off the ground, maybe there's space to lift a little higher. So seeing if you can keep the hips looking straight down here. So sometimes it can be tempting to kind of open up the hip because then there's a lot more space, but we're getting into the back of the legs. So keeping the hips facing down, lifting from the inner thigh, one more breath, and then lowering that foot down. A little shake through the legs if you want. Bending the knees, hands by the feet, and stepping back, downward facing dog. So maybe as we're coming into these downward dogs, you're beginning to find a little bit more space through the legs as you take these little pedals. Again, not forcing anything today, really being gentle and mindful. On your next inhale, finding a way to center, right foot comes forward in between the hands. And this time grounding down the back foot, bending through the front knee, rising up, warrior two. So warrior two, hips are facing to the side of the mat, bending through the front knee, knees opening towards the little toe edge of the foot, and then fingertips reaching front and back of the mat, shoulders straight over the hips if you can. Taking a couple of breaths here. You can gaze over those front fingertips. And then straightening up through the front leg, shifting the hips backwards a little bit, reaching forward with the right fingers, and then from the waist, tipping, keeping the body exactly as it is, bringing the hand down to wherever it lands, coming into triangle. So it might be that where the hand comfortably lands is the thigh, and then the arm can come up overhead. Don't press on the knee. If you're not going for the thigh, you're going for somewhere on the shin. And I would suggest that unless you're feeling super open today, you stick with one of those two. So it is possible to do triangle, holding onto the ankle, or even with the hand on the floor, but it's much better to keep the body open in this pose. So you're looking for openness through the chest. You can bring the gaze up to the hand if you want, or you can keep it straight ahead if that feels better for the neck. On your next inhale, taking a bend through the front knee, rising up into warrior two. And then hands by the feet, windmill, putting them either side, spinning onto the back toes and back into downward facing dog. So continuing to take those pedals through the feet if it feels good in downward facing dog. Really grounding down through the hands, so not forgetting about the hands here, making sure that they're nice and flat to the ground, that the knuckles of the fingers are all pressing down. On your next inhale, rising up onto the toes, coming onto the other side, so left foot forward in between the hands, grounding down the back foot, bend through the front knee, rising up, warrior two. And getting yourself set up here, so checking that you're feeling really solid in the feet, checking that the knee's nice and open, and then reaching front to back. So the reason why we also do these side opening postures is because the hamstrings are made up of 3 muscles. So it's not just one big muscle in the back of the leg. So actually all of these different movements help to open up the hamstrings as a whole. Straightening the front leg, moving the hips backwards slightly to create some space, reaching forward with the left fingertips. And then tipping from the waist, wherever the hand naturally falls. Maybe it's the thigh, maybe it's the shin. And that right arm lifts straight up overhead, palm facing to the side. And you can bring your gaze up to that hand if you like, or you can bring the gaze straight ahead if that's more comfortable. So with your bottom hand, seeing if you can kind of not press too hard. Sometimes it's easy to kind of collapse into that bottom hand, so seeing if you can just very, very lightly press there. So you can do triangle pose if you want, with just the back of the hand leaning against the leg rather than holding on. One more breath here. And then bending through the front knee, back to warrior two. Windmill the hands either side of the feet, spinning onto the back toes, downward facing dog one last time. Taking a couple more breaths here in your downward dog, whatever that's looking like, whether it's pedaling the feet, whether the knees are bent. On your next inhale, rising up onto your toes, and then either stepping the feet towards the top of the mat or walking them in gradually. Finding a way to halfway lift this time, hands coming to shins or thighs, length through the spine. And then releasing forward fold, so upper body's heavy, you can have the hands to the ground, they can dangle, you can be in ragdoll. Taking a little bend through the knees as you roll all the way up to stand. And feel free to take a shake out with the legs. So from here we're going to come into Malasana. If you know you like to take Malasana with a block behind, then popping a little block behind you so you're nice and ready. Otherwise, toes are slightly out, heels are slightly in, so toes to the edges of the mat and heels in. Bringing the hands to prayer and lowering down. So you may need to pop your hand behind you just to kind of get your block in the right spot. And of course you can do this without the block if you prefer. So hands are coming to staying in prayer. Elbows are inside of the knees, and that helps to open the knees up. And then the chest draws forward. So finding a place where you can really benefit from the openness in this pose. So the reason for taking the supported Malasana with the block can be if you're feeling quite tight in your hip flexors or in the back of the ankles or in the calves. This helps to just kind of let those muscles relax for a second and open up. If you want a more active version, then you can remove the block and then see if you can still keep the chest forward. Sometimes when the block's removed, it can be hard to stay with the heels down. And of course, you can come up onto the toes in this pose if you want, and then work on the heels coming down over time. So squatting isn't something that's part of Western culture really, and as a result, it's not always a pose that we feel really comfortable in. So if this doesn't feel super comfortable, then don't worry. It just takes a bit of time for the body to feel okay in this pose. Bringing the hands behind you, coming to sit, removing any blocks. And then maybe taking a little shake through the legs. So lots of releasing of the legs today. Feels really nice when you're doing lots of intense work. And then coming to sit, so you're widthways on your mat, opening up your legs to a comfortable wide position. Now if in this position you're noticing that rounding through the back, so like we were saying at the beginning, if you know that you sit in this kind of position and the legs are so tight that actually the lower back wants to round, bringing the hands behind the body and using, as you press through the fingertips, that pressure to be able to bring the back straight and the chest forward. So this might be your variation of this pose, to stay in this place so that the spine can be long. Because remember, this is the aim with all of these poses, for the spine to be long and to open the back of the legs. So don't worry about folding forwards here if this feels really, really good. If you're quite comfortable sitting without the hands behind and you can feel that there's length through the spine, then you're welcome to bring the hands in front. And it might be again that this feels like enough just here. If there is space to be able to come forward, you're welcome to come forward. Again, it's leading with the chest. So it may be that it's just coming forward a tiny little amount, that it's just an inch or two. So checking in with yourself as you're coming forward, if you decide to do that. Is my spine still long? Am I overstretching in the hips or in the back of the legs? Am I feeling any nasty pulling sensations? This is all about coming just to the point where you begin to feel a stretch, not to the point where you're really uncomfortable and where the body's saying you need to back out. If you get to that point, please do back out. So yeah, just coming forward to where your body feels comfortable. You will see lots of yoga practitioners who will take hold of the feet and bring the forehead down to the ground. Don't feel like that's where you've got to aim to be, okay? You're completely all right wherever you are. And wherever you are, if it's what your body needs, then that is the best place to be. So maybe allowing your eyes to close so that you can kind of draw inwards, breathe into the body, and kind of feel into where it wants to be. Couple more breaths here. Again, don't worry about where you are, just go with what feels good. Now, if you have decided to take a fold forward, walking back with the hands, and then a hand underneath each knee wherever you are to bring the legs together. And maybe you want to have hands behind the body, either that shake out with the legs that we did before, or maybe just a little kind of windscreen wiper of the legs side to side. And then from here, having the legs straight out in front, couple of options for this next one. So option number one is to draw the right foot in, hold on to the right knee with the left hand comes behind the body, coming into a little twist. So we're just kind of doing a very gentle opening now, winding down on the left leg. If you're feeling like you'd like to get into the hips, so if you know your hips get quite tight as well as your hamstrings, then we're picking up the left foot and bringing it underneath the right leg, bending the knee, and laying it down flat on the ground. The right foot then comes to the outside of the left thigh. So you can see there is an element of getting a little tangled up here. And here you can either stay holding on, interlacing fingers around the knee. You'll notice that just starts to get into the right hip. Or if you'd like to still take a twist, then you can hold on to the knee and bring the right hand behind. So same kind of idea as the other variation. So this is just an extra for if you'd like to get into the hip as well. Otherwise, feel free to stay with your Marichasana C, so with the left leg out in front and taking a little twist, releasing the body, letting it have a bit of time out after all that intense hamstring work. And if you're in your twist, coming in as far as feels good, so it can be just a very small twist, just slightly turning the upper body, twisting from the waist, or you may twist fully and come to look over the right shoulder. One more breath here. And then to release, you're bringing that right foot back to normal. And then hands can come behind the body, straightening out the left foot. And again, you might want to do a shake with the legs, or you might want to do a little windscreen wipe with the legs. So your choice on that one. Coming on to the other side. So if you would like to take your Marichasana C, right leg's coming out, left leg in, hips width apart, holding onto the left knee with the right hand, and then twisting over to the left. And if you feel that you'd like to get into the hips, you can bring that right leg underneath the left, laying it down on the ground, and then left foot comes outside of that right thigh, and then you begin to get into that left hip. Option to still take that twist if you like, so hand onto the left knee, left hand comes behind the body, and then twisting. So lots of different options here. Go with what feels good for you. And maybe allowing your eyes to close, breathing into that left hip if that's somewhere that's feeling quite tight today. On your next inhale, allowing that left leg to come back to normal. And then hands behind the body, and you can take either that windscreen wiper or the shake through the legs to release. And winding down now, getting ready for Shavasana. So option as we did with the last opening flow to take legs up the wall for Shavasana. So if you've got a wall handy, or maybe even a sofa that you can pop your legs up onto, that's a really nice way to kind of just release the legs and release all of the tension that might be there, letting them benefit from the increased venous return. If you haven't got a wall handy, then lowering yourself down onto your back, and this is where you can really use your cushions and your blanket to support yourself. So what you might want to do is have the legs slightly apart, cushion underneath each knee, and then blanket underneath your head. If you have got access to a wall, like I have, then as always, if you're coming into legs up the wall, then you're bringing your body close to the wall sideways first, and you're lowering down from here so that you can kind of turn around and scoot around and put the legs up. So it's so much easier than trying to do it any other way. At least I think it is. And you can still bring a cushion or a blanket underneath your head if you'd like. Now from here, maybe you let the arms open up to the side, or maybe you bring them up overhead. So finding a pose to finish in, something for Shavasana that feels really good for your body. So it doesn't even have to be one of the ones I suggested, but those are just two possibles. And then coming back to that intention at the start of class, were you able to look after yourself in class today? How does your body feel having done that really gentle opening up in the hamstrings? So maybe reminding yourself, if your hamstrings were feeling super tight today, it's okay for them to be feeling tight. It will come with time. Be kind to yourself. Maybe you've been able to do some things that you weren't able to do before, and today has felt really, really good. So wherever you are, acknowledge the feelings that are coming, and that it's okay to be in whatever place you're in. Coming back to those inhales and exhales. Inhaling, breathing space and length into the body one last time. And exhaling through the mouth to release. Taking your rest in Shavasana. So do stay here for as long as you're able to, at least a couple more minutes, allowing your body to open up and relax. Hope this has felt really good today. Thank you for joining me. Namaste.